Welcome to the UST Education recorded webinar series. This session is powered by US Transactions. UST is a boutique payment processing firm providing you with personalized service. We offer agnostic, best fit technology solutions for associations, nonprofits, and enterprise clients.
I think so. I think it'll be all right.
Excellent. So you can see my slide all right, Nicole and Chris?
Yeah, I can see what
Excellent.
you can see.
Yep, looks great.
Excellent. Okay, well, let's get started. Introduce ourselves. I'm Rob Kane, there on the right. I am the Director of North America for Cantaris. I am located in the US. Chris is not, and you'll tell that from his accent very soon when he introduces himself. I've been in the association space for almost 30 years, 35 years. Wow, it's been a while. I've worked at two different associations, a professional society and a trade association. I worked at a couple different AMS vendors. I worked at an online community platform. Now I'm working with Cantaris, which is a digital agency out of the UK. Happy to be here. Chris, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Absolutely. I'm Chris Menes. I'm the Senior Data Analyst here at Cantaris. I've been employed at this company for 8 years now. So definitely got plenty of experience in providing, primarily analytics, but also cookie compliance solutions for our clients over the years, mostly to membership organizations, but we have some charities in the mix, sports team, um, local government, and a couple of other branches of that too.
And just for reference, he's a smart one on this call. We should probably preference that neither of us are lawyers. We did talk to a lawyer before this, but neither of us are lawyers, so do not take anything as legal advice that we're telling you today.
No, please
just our
do not.
general feelings and understanding of what's out there, but we're not lawyers. A little bit about Cantaris. We're a digital agency. As I mentioned, we are out of the UK, but we try to help mostly associations create incredible digital experiences for their members and constituents. We are based in Manchester. We also have offices and people in London. I am here in the US outside Washington, D.C., as you can tell from my background, hopefully. And again, we have about, I guess, like 120 clients at this point. Two-thirds of them roughly are associations. We've got about 80 people on staff. Half of those are developers. And so we really do a lot of great custom personalized solutions for our clients. We do a lot of different things, mostly web and app engineering. We do a lot with websites on .NET platforms like Umbraco and Kentaco. We do have our own mobile app that we sell. We're really trying to get all of your content into one place so your members can look in the palm of their hand and find out everything's going on with your association. We did acquire a CRM company last year. We're selling that in the UK, not in the US anytime soon. But we do have that capability, understanding of different CRM systems. This one in particular is on Dynamic CRM. We can do design and branding. So if you want a really cool site that looks good, we can do that for you as well. We have digitized publications, so the British Army and has their Soldier magazine, and the British Medical Association had the Doctor magazine. So we've taken those historic publications and made them digital so people can go online and easily get to them. We've done work with online community, particularly with the Discourse platform. That's mostly in the UK. We do support and hosting center that we have. We do support the different platforms that I've mentioned. We have lots of different consultancies. We have a marketing team that can help your marketing team. And of course, we have data and insights, which is Chris's area. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit more about what you do since it's your area?
Yeah, I am that bottom right-hand eighth of this particular slide. However, I have totally forgotten to mention the fact that I am also involved in the app analytics. I am also involved in the portal analytics for that CRM piece. I'm involved in the digital publications analytics and the online community piece as well. So I am everywhere on this particular slide.
Excellent. You mentioned some of our clients. We have a lot of them in the UK, mostly membership organizations. So the Royal Institute of British Architects would be akin to the American Institute of Architects. We have British Medical Association that I mentioned, American Medical Association. We have the British Army, which may or may not be a membership body, depending on how you look at it. We have nonprofits, we have universities, we have for-profit companies, all different kinds of people that we work with, but generally it's 2/3 of it, 80 or so customers in the association space that we help. And we have good satisfaction numbers. The Net Promoter Score, I think, is pretty incredible. If you know what a Net Promoter Score is, it can be -100 to +100, and we're at 75, which is good. Good certifications around security and quality, so just an all-around good company, and we have good results. So we get award-winning websites, most recently for the Royal College of Physicians and the British Army's website. So just pretty good organization. If we can help you in some way, please reach out. I've got my contact information at the end. So what are we going to talk about today? What the issue is, what a cookie is, why do we care, what are the rules, and what do you need to be done. Pretty standard, straightforward. We're going to try and keep it a little conversational, keep it a little more engaging. So feel free to put in questions if you have them, and Chris and I will try and answer them. So what are we talking about here, huh? We're talking about cookies. What are cookies, Chris?
Well, so first of all, we've got this example of a cookie banner that sort of appeared on our slide. This is actually our website for what that's worth. Other than the fact that obviously we are compliant when it comes to our own cookie regulations, etc. This is obviously a good example of a cookie banner. We'll have many instances throughout this talk where we will tell you what a good cookie banner should do and what the sort of rules are when it comes to the setup of one of those things. We will also be covering the specific definitions of like a cookie and stuff like that later on in the talk. So what's really good about this one that's coming in on the left-hand side? It's quite information dense. We can see there's lots of descriptors of what types of cookies there are involved. It's quite granular. You can toggle on and off specific classes of cookies, categories of cookies. We will be going over that later on in the talk as well. There are nice, clear instructions for accepting cookies and not accepting cookies. In this particular case, the buttons do exactly what they say they should. This can then be minimized and brought back later on. Can we have a look at the next slide with the next cookie banner on it here? This is another very sort of ubiquitous cookie banner that we see all across the internet at this point. This is a Cookiebot banner. Unsurprisingly, we have chosen their website to show this off. Again, very information dense, nice and granular. You can toggle on and off all of these different categories. And again, very clear instructions as to whether you can accept or deny. You'll notice that this one has a different format. It appears as a modal or a pop-up in the middle of your screen, as opposed to a swipe in from the left or the right-hand side. You have to interact with this particular modal before you interact with the website behind it. So it forces your users to make a choice on acceptance or rejection of cookies before moving on. And I'm actually going to go into some detail later on as to why that's a good thing and not a bad thing. It's surprising what the sort of effect is going to be on that one. The previous cookie banner, I should say, sorry, Rob, the previous cookie banner was provided by Civic Cookie Control. Just because I mentioned the brand on this one, I might as well mention the brand on the first one. Well, these are good cookie banners. Perhaps we should discuss what a bad cookie banner is. And here we have a particularly terrible one. I'm really hoping this one's a mock-up and not like lifted from a website per se. So what's wrong with this one? I've already mentioned a couple of things that might be. The wording is horrible on this, right? So yes, enhance my experience versus I don't want personalization doesn't quite get across. I accept cookies and I reject cookies. It's misleading, isn't it? You're trying to force people towards one of the buttons as opposed to the other. I don't have a particular issue with the highlighting of one of the buttons, but in this particular case, it's even going further towards being misleading in information here. This is not good, right? This is trying purposefully to mislead your users into accepting cookies. And again, we're going to go into quite some detail as to like ways to achieve that sort of thing without being so obviously misleading.
But at least this one gives you a choice. There are other ones
It
out there that don't really give you a choice.
It absolutely does. These I affectionately call my do nothing banners. So these ones, I mean, we can go through them in turn first. So that first one is basically just telling you that they use cookies, and then you have an OK button or a got it button or whatever your acceptance is on that one. That's not good enough, but at least it gives you a button. The second one doesn't. The second one just tells you it's already happening, and you can link out to their privacy notice and other such things as well. But ultimately, you're expected to just press that X and move on. And then the last one, similarly, it just tells you that the cookies are happening. You can go off to the settings page, but you're to accept cookies anyway. Worse still, in the case of all three of these, they're already collecting cookies before you give consent. So unsurprisingly, that's not particularly good. You have to wait until a user provides consent to collect their data before collecting their data. So far, we've seen in terms of the bad banners, we've seen misleading information, we've seen collecting data before consent is given. None of these banners can be retrieved. We're going to go over that later as well. So the analog behind this is you're allowed to change your mind as a user, according to all of these frameworks and regulations that we'll go into. So you can say, I accept cookies, but maybe a couple of pages in and decide, oh, actually, can I go back and change my mind on that one? So none of these will be retrievable at all whatsoever. And there are nice and clever ways to make them retrievable without ruining the aesthetic look of your website, by the way. This has all been well thought out on that front. And yeah, and those tend to be the sort of rules and regulations surrounding it, but we'll go into them a little bit further on.
I think we could have shown other examples where, there are two buttons, but one of them is really highlighted and one's not, or you have to there's an accept button that's highlighted, but if you want to reject, you have to go down a rabbit hole and try and click on the right link to find that reject thing, which is not appropriate. So I think we have our folks. Go ahead.
Which is possibly ironic, actually, because if in most situations that I can think of, if you provide somebody with an accept button and an obtuse sort of rabbit hole that you have to go down, you'll find that people probably will, out of spite, go down the rabbit hole. And sometimes if you provided the simple choice, it's probably more effective.
Again, not a lawyer, but if you're trying to obscure something on your website because you don't want people to select it and you go to court, I don't think that's going to go well for you if it's obviously you're trying to obscure something. So, yeah. We do have a poll question next, I believe, which is, do you usually, when you're going to sites, do you usually accept, reject, or customize the cookies? I'll let you guys respond in the chat, but usually reject. I think people are usually rejecting or customizing. Ooh, customize or reject.
Interesting.
I don't usually customize too much. I either accept or reject. It usually depends which site I'm on, and if I know I'm going to be coming back or it's somebody I trust. But in general, I try to reject when I don't know who they are, what's going on. Reject, customize only the mandatory ones. Reject. Wow, a lot of rejections.
So I'm actually not seeing a response appearing in this chat, which I thought I would, and that is depends on the website. So in my particular experience, it is a trust thing. So if I'm traveling to a membership organization that I am a member of, right? Let's say I already pay for WAC for membership of an organization, and I'm traveling to their website and I get the cookie banner message coming up. I tend to just accept cookies on them because I basically already trust them. However, if I'm traveling to, let's say, my go-to for this is usually like recipe websites or something, so I quite like cooking. And I find with them that I've never been to this website, probably not going to be back all that often, and I tend to just reject cookies on them. So I oddly think that the question of accept reject is usually down to brand or trust. So it's one of those things which I think improves based on sort of the stability and strength of your brand as opposed to anything else. It's actually something that I see reflected in client data. So one of the things that you can put into place, and we'll be talking about some of these options later on, is consent logging. So a lot of off the shelf, or whatever you want to, out of the box, or whatever you want to call that kind of thing, cookie banners provide something called consent logging. So it'll tell you the percentage of the people traveling to your website that accept or reject cookies. I see that number higher in membership organizations than I do in other kinds of industries, for example. And I see that sort of quite well represented in the data that I've seen.
Looked at some generic reports before this. They tend to say 50 or 60% of people reject them. So yeah, but and I think looking at the responses, I think people more reject on who are on this this webinar with us generally reject. Interesting. So what are they actually rejecting? What is a cookie? Let's focus down on that. Yeah.
So
what are you actually rejecting?
We've sort of jumped in with the cookie banners. Let's move on to sort of a little bit more technical detail as to what a cookie is. A cookie is a text file. It's a tiny, tiny text file that's stored on your browser or on your device if you're on a mobile or something along those lines. So here we have sort of a list of cookies. I believe Rob has traveled to LinkedIn for this particular slate of cookies. Loads and loads of things on here. What can you store in a cookie? So all sorts of things, really. Don't panic. Like, I know this looks like LinkedIn is tracking the hell out of Rob, but there's plenty on here that's not that. For example, his language preference might be set as a cookie, and I think it is there. So some people with better sight can probably confirm that for me. His language preferences, there could be his location, his time zone, his font size. There might be accessibility tools, for example, that might want to increase his font size, the color of particular elements of that website. So maybe there's a contrast issue. All sorts of accessibility tools might be stored during there. Moving on from that, you've got really sort of intrinsic parts of the internet. You've got anti-forgery tokens. So there are wonderful frameworks that are put in place to essentially determine that you are you and that you are not a robot and that you are a real human accessing the website. So that's all stored in cookies. And you can imagine that's really, really important. Whenever you log in on any website, I assure you, a cookie is set so that your session is logged and that it knows that you are logged in. It serves you different content, so it would remove gates on gated content for that reason. Even for things such as that you've purchased behind a paywall on a news site, for example, that's all stored on a cookie for you behind a login. So that there's still plenty there, and we've not even got to the bits and pieces which people might associate with cooking, which is your sort of everyday tracking across the internet. So yes, for analytics, you might find that, let's say, Google Analytics, because they're the most prevalent, will set a cookie for you and give you a user ID, and that's how they know that you've gone from page 1, page 2, page 3, and that's your session. And it sends off pieces of information to Google based on you traveling across the site with that cookie in place. And on top of that, you also have marketing type cookies. So think well, there's things like Google Ads, there's things like all your social media platforms. They all have cookies in place that allow you collect pieces of information on you and send it back to their platform so that you can be better targeted with ads. By and large, when it comes to the frameworks and regulations that we'll be discussing today and the consent that comes out of this, we're really mainly interested in the last two sort of categories, so your analytics cookies and your marketing cookies. And that's where we'll be perhaps focusing a little bit more.
If you wanted to see this yourself, this is a browser screen. So if you right click on a page and inspect, you'll get a little window that pops up and you can drive back into the cookies here and see the actual cookies that are being collected on you. So that's what I did for this screenshot. This is LinkedIn. I think you should mention. So you see they're collecting a lot of information about me when I go to their site.
Right, and then we have a slide with a bit more of a technical definition. So that first one is pretty much verbatim what I've just said. But whenever these frameworks and regulations are put into place, it's frequently referred to as cookies and similar technologies, or at least that's what's done in the UK and EU. I'm pulling a lot of this from the ICO, which is the Information Commissioner's Office here in the UK, but there are relevant US bodies that you can check this against as well. In any case, we're just going over a couple of examples. So we have local shared objects. Those are also stored on your browser or on your device, but they're not cookies. They're just almost like legally distinct, but not for this particular purpose. You've got other apps. So how many times have you given permission for one of your apps on your phone to access another one of your apps? Maybe that's photos or phone or something along those lines. They also covered by this sort of framework. There's surveillance tech. So what qualifies as surveillance tech while still being legal? So you've got things like some companies put surveillance tech on laptops for productivity monitoring, for example. Some I don't know, there's things like Find My Phone type technologies, for example. That's all, you need full permission and consent from the end user, and sometimes that's in an employment contract. But you need consent from them before you actually put them on there. And I'm sure the words wiretapping will come up at some point in this webinar, but that's essentially one of the other ones. Spyware, this is the not legal version of that. So that also qualifies as something that people should be getting permission from. So a lot of this is quite fun, really, because these are laws and frameworks. A lot of the ways that you put people away for or fine people for disseminating spyware are through these legal frameworks. Not to say that anybody here is interested in that sort of thing. And lastly, we've got pixels, and we'll be covering pixels later on in our slide deck, but they're essentially small images that allow you to collect information on your user and pass it off usually to a social media platform, which will share it with other databases and try and piece together a picture of that user.
We say cookies, cookie banners, but it's really all the technology that's being used to track what you do. You want to let people opt into that and not just do it without their permission.
Absolutely.
And I know people were asking about the necessary cookies, that they couldn't not accept them when they were going to different sites. So why don't you explain the different types of cookies that are consent categories that there are?
Absolutely. Let's go through some categories. So it's actually worth noting that despite there being frameworks and such for these sorts of things, there is no defined phrasing for these things. So you can call them almost what you like, really, but they broadly fall into a bunch of categories. So there's essential or necessary cookies. So these are cookies that are such that a website will not deliver its functionality without them. Let's give you some good examples of those. So login cookies, for example. So if you have a site that requires a login and you block the login cookie, then no one's going to be able to log in on that site that requires a login. So those are deemed as essential for the functionality of those websites. Same as the cookies I mentioned before that were important in determining whether you were a human or not. Same for all sorts of anti-forgery type things. Perhaps self-referentially, the cookie that your cookie banner sets to determine your cookie preferences. That's going to be essential as well, because otherwise your cookie banner wouldn't work and then everything would fall apart. Moving on, we have preferences. So this is an interesting category because it's quite new, really. So these are used to remember user settings. So I mentioned some of Rob's earlier, his language, his time zone, some accessibility features, for example. The problem with this is that sometimes it is heavily argued by the websites companies that are implementing these banners that some of these preference cookies are deemed to be essential. And there's actually a fair bit of debate there. I don't think it's hard and fast, really. If you have a site which is entirely reliant on its accessibility tools, maybe you have I don't know, an eyesight health website, and it's all about whether people will or will not be able to read the content on that website, then there's a fair case, I think, to argue that an accessibility cookie is quite functional and necessary as opposed to just a preference. But even then, sometimes it's assumed that preferences are to be bundled in with the essential and necessary cookies. Less controversially, though, analytics and statistical cookies are used to gather basically session data and store it in a storage solution. So it's usually on the cloud servers or something along those lines, and then it's displayed for data purposes. But it's only displayed for data purposes, and you can then go and make choices based on that, but it's not quite the same as a marketing or targeted cookie, which automatically fires off that information back to a social media platform so that ads can be targeted towards that person. By and large, those are the other categories involved in a cookie banner. But typically speaking, we're interested in essential versus non-essential, or necessary versus non-necessary cookies. Worth noting that the granularity of a cookie banner adds a lot of user agency, but typically speaking, it's not necessary. If you allow them to reject all cookies, then that's fine. It's just you have to have it as an opt-in thing. Most people go for a granularity or manage settings or configure your settings sort of approach. And it is actually worth mentioning there's another sort of divide and category of cookies here, and that's first-party versus third-party cookies. Essentially, first-party cookies are cookies that are set against the domain of your website. So let's say I'll use Kintaros.com because that's ours, and our cookies that are set against our website. So maybe we have, let's say we have a login cookie, though I do not believe we do, then that will be set against Kintaros.com. So it will be a first-party cookie, but our third-party cookies, you might find our social media stuff, cookies are third-party because they'll be set against LinkedIn.com, for example. Why is this important? Well, it's important in part because it's fairly well established that they intend on bringing in a lockdown on third-party cookies. So they want frameworks and regulations to be brought into place to remove third-party cookies and have them all be first-party. That might be something in the next couple of years that we have to deal with. Forward a warning. We're all waiting for the day that they turn around and announce that that's going to be introduced into Chrome. If you're in an incognito mode in Chrome, by the way, you block third-party cookies in general. And there are settings within your browsers that can block those too.
Yeah, I think the way I've heard that is that we have a tool with Umbraco called Umbraco Engage, where it tracks what you do in its database as opposed to sending it off to a third party like Google to track them over there and keep the data over there.
Exactly. Sometimes they're called server-side integrations as well. So Google has their own server-side integration that you can spin up as well. The difficulty and issue with these server-side integrations is they frequently have a storage cost associated with them because you have to store them somewhere, as opposed to using, I don't know, Google Analytics or something, which is a third-party solution.
We talked about some other things other than cookies. There's also pixel tracking, where they put a small image out there, and as that image is loaded onto the pages, they can tell all kinds of stuff about you, your IP address, what browser you're using, what OS you're on, what device, what you do on that site, how long you're on each page. Sometimes they will drop a cookie, but they can be used for a variety of purposes. A lot of people will use them in emails. So an email will load an image, and that's how they know you actually opened the email. And a lot of these are tied to like Google and Facebook and TikTok pixel tracking. So if you're logged into those platforms, they know a little bit more. They can know a little bit more about you and track information about you. Potentially.
Actually, really fun anecdote around those email ones. Sometimes there are pieces of software that your IT teams undoubtedly use to scan emails for phishing attacks and such, but they qualify sometimes for the pixels, so they appear in your data. And because their job is to literally click every link in an email frequently, a lot of emails look like they have 100% open rate, basically. But that just happens because the pixel doesn't know essentially that it's a scanner that's coming through. They're a bit odd sometimes.
So we've talked about the different tracking. Why do we care, right? Who cares if people are tracking? Well, there are laws about what you can do. I think the probably more famous one is the GDPR. If you want to talk a little about that, Chris, because you're over there in Europe.
Absolutely. So yeah, the General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, is a framework that was brought into place to sort of put in, allow for, well, to regulate all of these websites that should be asking permission before collecting data. It has implications that reach far beyond cookie banners, everything from forms on clipboards, it goes as sort of manual as that, down to the storage of people's CVs for a certain period of time after job applications, all sorts really. But with regards to cookie banners, there are fines and penalties in play. So in particular, it's 20 million euro or 4% of annual global revenue. Note the word global. Sorry, whichever is higher of those two fairly large numbers. Note the word global on that. So they are perfectly capable of targeting international organizations, so long as the end user is in a country that is beholden to one of these frameworks. It should be said that although the GDPR is an EU thing, it's well known enough that the UK is not part of the EU. But one of the things that was immediately put into place was basically mirroring the law perfectly. So it's definitely in play here. And there's also non-EU countries that have similar laws in place.
In the US, most notably in California, people have had legal action taken against them for tracking folks without permission using wiretapping laws and eavesdropping. The California Invasion of Privacy Act has been used in a couple of lawsuits and legal actions in California. It's California residents suing California companies, but that has happened, and that has significant amounts as well. It's $5,000 or 3 times the actual damages per violation. So that could be a person visits a site, I guess, multiple times, and money people visit that site. So it could be, again, a significant amount of money. 20 million euros was a lot. 5,000 times a lot of different members could be a lot visiting your sites. And it's not just California. Other sites have similar privacy laws. I think California is the main one where suits have been brought, but I wouldn't be surprised to start seeing them in other states. And of course, there are new laws coming up all the times that might affect this as well. So if it's not affecting you now, it very well could affect you in the future.
Sure. And it's relevant in the sense that there's plenty of organizations that are statewide, for example, right? Or US wide, and would have users in California. Frequently, adherence to one of these frameworks purely because it's easier to do the most stringent thing everywhere is known as the Brussels or the California effect for this reason. So plenty of places worldwide. Technically, what you could do is provide a very specific geographical solution based on where your end user is, but you'll find that that's quite technical, quite difficult to implement, quite even harder still to maintain, and it's usually the easiest and cheapest solution to just go whole hog and implement either a GDPR or California style solution everywhere worldwide.
We've talked about what the issue is, what cookies are, why do we care, the legal action. What are the actual rules that we want to follow?
Yeah, and we touched upon these as we sort of moved through our slides, but we'll detail them exactly here. So you're going to tell people that the cookies are there, so that you are collecting data using cookies or similar technologies. And for the record, I don't think we showed a single banner today, even the bad ones, that didn't fulfill this, right? So this is a really easy checkbox to fulfill. They all said we collect cookies, we use cookies, et cetera, et cetera. That's a checkbox that basically you would only not fulfill if you didn't have a banner. The second one on there, so explain when what the cookies are doing and why. So this is, I think you must have heard me say earlier in this talk, oh, this is a very information dense banner. So by which I mean they were explaining what analytics cookies were, and that there was a category of analytics cookies. Some of those had expanding areas that could even tell you the vendors associated with those cookies. So that's probably overkill, but you can also link out to a cookie policy page that explains everything for you. So you can have quite an information light, a sleek banner, even if you were so inclined to use that word. And had a cookie policy page that would detail all the sort of different cookies that you've got. You've got to get the person's consent to store a cookie on their device. So it has to be opt-in, not opt-out. And you have to allow for the person to change their mind. So the banner has to be retrievable in some way. There are interesting ways to do that, right? So we've seen, I mean, frankly, we've seen banners that minimize to usually a triangle or an icon that you can then click on and it expands out the banner again. We've seen banners that entirely disappear, but maybe there's a link in the footer of your website that brings them back. As long as you can retrieve the banner and change your mind, that's seen as fine in that sense. So yeah, so there are a few minor differences in these rules internationally. Typically, that's the EU GDPR one. I think there is a slight difference in some of the wording if you're stateside, but by and large, just look up maybe the CIPA and see what they say about that. Regulations move quite quickly, and I assure you of that. I've been working in this for 8 years, and I've seen frameworks move rapidly. I've already mentioned that third party versus first party thing, which is permanently around the corner, but nevertheless there. So that could move. We've had introductions of things like Google Consent Mode in the last couple of years, which has sort of changed the game for these off-the-shelf banners. We've tried even maintaining and building our own cookie banners for clients, and we find that it's really difficult to keep up with all the maintenance and regulation that goes out with all of these things, and it's much easier to trust an off-the-shelf solution. We'll be covering a couple of options behind that. It is also worth noting, and because it'll be in the back of all of your minds, I'm sure, because analytics data is an opt-in under these settings, you will probably have a data loss associated with adherence to these rules. This is where things like consent logging is really important. So if I implement a cookie banner and my data drops 40%, right, I lose 40% of my data to people rejecting cookies. It's really important that I have that piece of information that says, oh, actually, you have a 60% acceptance rate on your cookie banner. And I can turn around and say, like, right, I have a 60% acceptance rate on my cookie banner. I know that my true figures are an extra, or this is only 60% of my true figures. And you can say that with a reasonable degree of certainty and bake that into your figures and business decisions. That's really important. There is also a thing that we'll be chatting about called Google Consent Mode quite rapidly. But that has some benefits that let you work around some of that data loss aspect.
I feel like that last one's key because it's kind of you feel like you're doing something good by having the cookie banner out there and doing it correctly, and it ends to a loss of data. So people aren't opting in. So if only half the people are opting in, you only have data on half the people that visit your website. So counterintuitive to me, but.
Well, welcome to my job.
So our next question is, where are you in your cookie compliance journey? If you want to put in the chat, are you just starting out? Do you have cookie banner or using a third party? What are you doing for your cookie compliance right now? Just starting, just starting out learning. Excellent. So,
we've got a slide for you coming up.
Yeah. trying to convince leadership that we need one. Wow.
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 No, I
It's,
appreciate that. No, truly, I understand your plight. It's something I've had to experience. Sometimes it is a conversation that needs to take place. And hopefully some of the information in this talk has gives you some tools to go to them with that.
so, sounds like a lot of people are just starting out. So, what do they need to do?
Oh, it's almost as if we planned this. Right. Right, yeah. So who do you need to get involved? There's a number of people that you can get together. So we've got your website development team. I appreciate some of you might be on sort of development light platforms, but if you do have a dev team that build your website, then they're definitely people that you want to get involved because they might be able to help you implement the banner, and they might have a good idea of what cookies are set by your platform. Good example is that we tend to run a lot of Umbraco websites. There are Umbraco related cookies, and our dev teams would know those. We have your legal team. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory why you should probably involve your legal team when it comes to legal frameworks and how to adhere to them. But nevertheless, I think that they're people to involve. Your web team, so I'm talking about your content, your managers, your website managers, etc. Obviously, the ownership is on them for the website, so they should be roped in for the cookie banner as well. They might manage the accounts, they might help implement the banners in that sense as well. And you've got your data / your analytics teams. Again, when it comes to your analytics cookies, they will have a good idea of what cookies are being collected for analytics, probably even for marketing purposes. They're probably the people that have access to things like Google Tag Manager. They're probably the people that are in and out of the docs anyway. It's no coincidence that this is in my remit here at Kantaris. And really useful tool. Well, then what you want to go from there is probably get an audit done of what cookies are used on your website. So compliance scanners, it will come to you as no shock that all of these cookie banner providers or consent management platform providers, as the technical term actually is there, that they make a wonderful business off of scanning your website to tell you where it's not compliant. These things do come at a cost, but they're fairly cheap. Just as the one that comes to mind, forgive me for the change in currency, but Civic Cookie Control has a scanner on for £50, and you get 5 scans with that, for example. So they're quite cheap. I don't believe the exchange rate between the pound and the dollar is that extortionate. So you're probably fairly comparable there. But yeah, definitely get a scan done. Again, what we do here, and it's really key, is we fall back to these off-the-shelf solutions, which are mandated by law to be compliant. So we lean on them to do the maintenance. We lean on them to do to be compliant, and we have to do less as a consequence of that.
I think that's our next slide where we recommend using the off-the-shelf
Yes.
solution, because as you mentioned earlier, we tried to do this ourselves and found it overwhelming for our clients. So we decided we should use an off-the-shelf solutions and recommend that to our clients, just because of the amount of change that goes on. So if some other state, decides that, or entity decides they want to change and make it so that everybody has to, reauthorize cookies every 6 months, you don't have to recode your solution if you built it yourself. You just depend on these third parties and they take care of that for you and you don't have to worry about it. And these third parties are fairly cheap. I think some of them were like $10 a month to do it when I looked earlier. And that's a lot cheaper than the $5,000 per incident or 20 million euros per for incident. So that's a lot cheaper than the penalty. And $10 a month is not a lot of money for that ease of mind in doing things correctly.
Yeah, and these regulations move quite quickly. I don't think I mentioned it before, but it's worth noting that even those do nothing banners that I enjoyed taking the mick out of earlier, they were once within regulation. So even just telling people that you were once having cookies used to be the regulation, and now they are completely out of date. Let's go through a couple of things that you guys can do. If you're on one of these platforms, in my head, these are things like WordPress or very much a plugin based platform like maybe Webflow or something like that. There are plugins that you can download and just put into place for all sorts of cookie banners, really, your cookie bots, etc. They all have plugins that you can do. Failing that, and even if it's still an option otherwise, Google Tag Manager. So that's a third-party free thing that you can implement on your website if you're not doing that already. That has a gallery of templates that you can install cookie banners with or consent management platforms with. And you can even implement something called Google Consent Mode, which is further down. You can also implement all of these things from your code as well. So you can still implement an off-the-shelf banner through your code. They all have scripts that you can implement into using your web team through your code. Google Consent Mode is actually really interesting, so I'm going to quickly talk about that. Essentially, there is a framework that Google have in place called Google Consent Mode. Why is it really important? Because a number of, aside from the fact that it makes it really easy to maintain, trust me on that one, because it made my job a lot easier. A number of the main sort of Google products, so Google Analytics, Google Ads, they have a wonderful feature that works with Google Consent Mode, where even if somebody would reject your cookies across your website, they can still collect, how should I say this, anonymized data on that user. So it'll have all you literally know is that somebody visited a page the homepage, for example, a specific page on your website. We don't know where they went. We don't know anything else about them. It's literally just a hit on that page. And they'll take that big pile of data and they'll use AI data modeling to morph that into what they reckon your data set would look like based on the information that they do have from the people that did accept cookies. So it's actually quite novel. I totally recommend looking up Google Consent Mode and the data modeling that can go into that one as well. We have the server-side implementations that we've spoken about, so that you can do things on first-party cookies. Really, really useful to look into, but would strongly recommend looking at that's probably a bit more advanced. And this is really cliche, so I apologize, but ongoing maintenance of your setup is kind of key, really. So although moving to an off-the-shelf solution reduces the maintenance quite significantly, maybe running a cookie scan once every 6 months, once a year. I mean, even that fairly cheap option that I mentioned with cookie control allows you to do 5 scans in a year, right? So if you just run those intermittently, then that will allow you to sort of keep on top of cookies that are slipping through the net. Apologies if anybody heard a fire alarm there, but it is now no longer doing that.
Didn't hear anything. But the ongoing maintenance is important because marketing might add more tracking stuff to your website, and you need to make sure that all your compliance banners are making sure they go first before you start collecting data on people, making sure you're putting in your privacy in your terms, what you're actually collecting, what you're doing with that data. So there's a lot to that maintenance that, depending upon what happens on your website.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think next we have our final questions. Are you using any off-the-shelf solutions already? I think I saw someone was earlier. A lot of people were just starting out. Don't know. Not sure. So I'm guessing not if you don't know.
I imagine you might have been in a meeting where you would have had to purchase a license off of someone for a certain period of time. Again, if you are using an off-the-shelf solution, please look into what scanners there are available and please run your scans regularly. There are, and even actually, what's really important is even if you are on an off-the-shelf solution, I would strongly recommend moving it into Google Tag Manager and using Google Consent Mode if you aren't already doing that. We've had a number of clients that were using, I'll just use the ones that we've mentioned so far. So Cookiebot, for example, but they were running it from their site code, and we've done a piece of work with them to move it into Google Tag Manager to allow them to leverage that Google Consent Mode. It is also worth noting that if you put your cookie banner into Google Tag Manager, you can make ongoing maintenance to it without deploying to the site, without having to restart the site or disrupt your users. So it's really useful to do that. And if you aren't using an off-the-shelf solution, then I think we've given plenty of reasons that why you might want to jump on to doing one, just for the sake of being compliant or being up to date with compliance more easily.
So that's pretty much our presentation. I don't know, Chris, if you want to give like a general summary of like, what people should do and what they should look out for, or wait for some questions to come in.
Feel free to ask any questions, by the way, everybody in chat. I'm sure somebody will flag that to me. But yeah, in general, my takeaways are, if you're not on an off-the-shelf solution, please move to one. I think you'll find it very freeing, that you won't have to worry about that. The internet is global, and you might have users internationally in places with frameworks that you might want to be listening to. Even failing that, there are the states are quite wide in that sense, and there are states with more stringent laws than others, and it's worth noting that you might have national organizations that still have users in California, for example, and you want to be careful around that sort of thing. Another takeaway is perhaps that it is not worth going for the full granular solution. We've tried implementing that in the past, and frankly, it's a nightmare. Because the second one of the many granular places implements a setting change or a regulation change, you've got to adhere to that, and it's fairly nightmarish. And again, regular maintenance. How are we for time?
Well, we got about 5 minutes till the end. I think there was one question I had that you answered the other day for me that I'll ask now. So
go for it.
If I have multiple sites at my association, I have a conference site, I have an LMS, I have different sites that do different things. Can my one cookie banner apply to all those sites? Right? Can I say once I decide to, once somebody agrees to allow me to track on one site, can that expand to all those sites?
So cookies, we sort of touched upon this with first-party cookies and stuff. So a lot of cookies are set at domain level, and that's really important. So a good example of this is typically loads of membership organizations have their main site and then an event site, but just on a different subdomain. A lot of licenses are per domain, so you can have these transfer over. I would typically assume that if I'm landing on my membership organization, for example, and they were to accept cookies, that would apply to my purchase journey for an event ticket, for example, which might be on a separate subdomain. You can definitely purchase one single banner that would apply to both of them. Same goes for your sort of major conference website. Again, that typically falls under an event. LMSs as well. If it sits under the same domain, there's no reason why not.
It's on the same domain, but if it's a different domain, like I have my regular association website, then I have annual conference for my meeting, a separate domain, that would be a separate cookie a separate banner I'd want to put up. Typically,
you would have to purchase a second license if it's a second domain, yes.
I want to ask again. I couldn't ask. I couldn't have acceptance on one domain go to other domains.
No. Yeah. No, you would have to have the banner pop up again as they went along. So I guess that's a benefit to having things under the same domain, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Don't think any questions came in there.
No, I don't think
we must have done a great job.